Welcome to the Change the Game podcast, where we are changing the game by doing business differently and highlighting the stories of capitalism at its best. I'm Steve Baker, and with me, as always, is Rich Armstrong, president of the Great Game of Business and co-author of our new book, Get in the Game, How to Create Rapid Financial Results and Lasting Cultural Change. Good morning, Rich. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Steve. Really good. How are you?
Really good. Probably because we have a really special guest today. Now, I'm going to tell you that Hamsa and I have known each other for a few years now. Hamsa Daher is the executive director of the Small Giants community, a peer group of purpose-driven business leaders. And I got to say, my experience with Hamsa has been great, both from providing content, but also as a partner and trying to promote one another's movements because they're so adjacent. A little bit of background on Hamsa. Since moving to the U.S. from Iraq in '91, she earned her bachelor's degree from Wayne State University and an MBA from Walsh College. Her experiences span higher education, the tech industry, and now business and leadership with the Small Giants community. She loves to spend time with her family and cooking, and I love this one, playing Scrabble. I mean, come on, what's not to love? Get those points and exploring cities, basically as a local. So Hamsa, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's so good to be with you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's so great to see you again. We did a previous episode talking to Paul Spiegelman, and we learned a little bit about the Small Giants community and how it came to life. I'm curious if you could share with our audience kind of how did you first get involved?
Yeah, sure. So I was working for a tech company here in Metro Detroit, and it was actually my first introduction to sort of purpose and culture and values. They were a purpose-driven organization. They had actually been involved with Small Giants even prior to me starting there. And I just fell in love with the concept of running business this way and this philosophy. And after 4 years of being there and a little bit of the change there with their culture and values, I realized I really have to be aligned to that in order to, be productive and engaged and be passionate. So I ended up kind of going in between gigs and searching for my next role. And that's when my dear friend and mentor, Rob Dubay, who of course is the co-founder of Image One, which happens to be a great game of business company, said, you should check out Small Giants. So he introduced me to Paul. I went out to Dallas. So that was 5 years ago, and the rest is history. So that's how I came to Small Giants.
That's awesome. And Rob's definitely a connector.
Yes.
Well, hi, Hamsa. So glad you could join us today. I'm curious, Small Giants community, helps connect, like-minded, purpose-driven leaders, and is based on some specific core values or pillars. And whether you identify as a small giant or not, I think the listeners would be really interesting to understand or may relate to these pillars. Could you talk a little bit more about those pillars?
Sure. Yeah, so there's 6 pillars that were described in the book that Bo obviously wrote many years ago. And then it's also what we use when we, have conversations with Small Giants all the time. So the first one is around purpose, vision, and values. And the idea that small giant companies not only sort of articulate their purpose and vision and values, but that they're truly practicing them day in and day out. So you see them, they're not just sort of words on the wall, they're used in hiring and attracting talent and even selecting customers and just really ensuring that everyone is aligned and that they're foundational and we say non-negotiable. So that's sort of the first step. The other piece is leadership. And so the idea that small giant leaders are really sort of sure of who they are and what they want out of business. They typically, we say they're humble, they're open, they're transparent, and they're servant leaders. So we especially look at that when we're connecting with small giant leaders and wanting to sort of grow them and develop them. The other piece is culture. And this is sort of my favorite one because small giant cultures are ones that we say they care for people in the totality of their lives. So, the way they look at the people that are in their organizations are not just someone that comes and works with you 9 to 5 and goes home. They're people, they're humans. And so you care for them in every aspect. And whether that be with you in the organization or if they even have to part ways, you have to part ways with them, you're caring for them. Everything is mindful, intentional, and thoughtful. Let's see, the other one is going to hit close to home, which is financial. So the idea that small giant companies, they care about the financial transparency, they care about literacy around the financials. They truly want to create a culture of owners. So whether that's literal or figurative, the idea is that if you want to be a financially sound organization, you really want to kind of share this ownership with others in the organization, you want to educate around it so everybody can act like an owner and can make the right decisions within the organization. Let's see, another one is around community. So the idea that you are deeply rooted in the communities where you practice business. Your community can be, the extension of your employees. It could be stakeholders, it could be customers. And the same goes with relationships, which is the last one, which is really every relationship you have, again, whether it be the person you're doing business with or organizations you're dealing with, all these relationships are important and they're all, again, aligned with your values and purpose. So those are the ways that we sort of describe these organizations.
That's great. And you can read more about Small Giants' origin in the original book, Small Giants by Bo Burlingham.
Mm-hmm.
And the book was really founded on the idea of that you have to make a conscious choice. Do you want to be great, but not necessarily big?
Mm-hmm.
And also at smallgiants.org. So Hamsa, what types of organizations and leaders are you seeing attracted to and participating in the Small Giants community?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. So, when it comes to companies, we say that we sort of see all industries. So manufacturing, technology, professional services, food industry, you name it. So we see all of it, marketing. We actually recently did a survey at the end of 2020. And what we found that probably about 50 to 60% of our audience in terms of company size is somewhere between 20 to 50 million in revenue. Those are established companies, 50 employees or more. And then in terms of leaders, we kind of sort of serve two audiences. There's a founder and CEO, which was the audience that we initially started with. But then what we got really excited by is the idea that a lot of small giant founders and business owners are, they don't want to be the only ones shouldering the responsibility of culture and values. They want to share that with everyone in the organization. So we expanded the audience to serve what we call emerging leaders. So that could be operators in the business, that could be leadership team members, up and coming stars. And so those are sort of the two audiences that we see. And I think sort of at the foundation of it, again, the leaders are lifelong learners. Again, they want to learn, they want to share this philosophy with others in the organization, and they want to continue to develop other leaders within the organization. So that's sort of the two audiences that we see and work with.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, very interesting. I mean, you are literally trying to build a community, right? Community of leaders
Mm-hmm.
that are like-minded, certainly like-minded and like-hearted.
That's
I'm
right.
curious, how do you go about doing that? How do you connect people? What kind of things do you provide in your community to help people connect and learn from each other?
Yeah, that's so there's a few different ways, and we've gotten sort of clear about our offerings in the last couple of years, just so we can do the best work that, in order to support these leaders. So there's lots of thought leadership. So just as you all do, there's podcasts, and we have blog and ebooks, and then virtual events. So we've been doing those for a long time. So we've been hanging out on Zoom for a lot longer than 2020. We'd say, hey, you want to connect on Zoom? People are like, what's that? And so now, of course, everybody knows what Zoom is about. So we do virtual events. So once a month, we gather people from the community, and whether it be roundtable discussions or workshops or fireside chat. But the idea is to bring people together and talk about what's top of mind for these leaders, what's happening in the small giant companies, what are the sort of opportunities and challenges. So thought leadership is one, and people can consume that and share with others. Then we also have an annual conference. So that's a couple of days of learning, developing, and really connecting on a deep level. And so, back in the day, it used to be in person. We're going to be virtual this year in April. But that's a great way to learn and connect with each other on a deep level. And then we have sort of two formal ways we say to engage with the community. There's a mentorship program. So that's one-on-one mentorship, very much from a practitioner sort of standpoint. So supporting leaders as they, are infusing a purpose-driven culture within their organization. And then we have something called the Leadership Academy, which is kind of the most comprehensive way to engage with the community, which is a one-year development program. Could be great for business owners, wonderful for emerging leaders. And it's a leadership development. So we're, developing the individual, but we're also giving them this philosophy from a practical perspective. So they can take that back to their organization implement and see change. So our hope is that there are many leaders at every level of the organization learning this philosophy and creating sustainable organizations. So that's sort of our, our favorite way to engage individuals is through the Leadership Academy.
Awesome. And speaking of the different events that you do, your annual summit's coming up this spring.
Yes.
Obviously, we're all working with the pandemic and the different ways that the world has been trained on Zoom now, which I think is pretty cool.
Sure.
So you can do a lot of different things than maybe we could have a few years ago. But what are some of the learning opportunities that are available for folks who attend?
Yeah. So we're trying to do, some things that are unique, just because I know people are tired of being in front of computers all day and all of that. But there will be many opportunities to connect with each other in smaller groups and larger groups. But, again, bringing that connection, because we know that's really important to small giants and leaders, like-minded leaders. So lots of opportunities to connect. And then there's a couple of different formats that we're using at the summit. So we will have the roundtable format, and essentially that allows people to come together and pitch their challenges. So what's happening in their business right now around specific topics and themes, and then allow the rest of the individuals who are attending to share, how they're maybe approaching that challenge or topic, and sharing the best practices and resources around that. So just a couple of examples, we're going to have a couple of roundtables on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So how organizations are approaching that topic. What are they doing? How are they dealing with unconscious bias, et cetera? We are going to have a couple on virtual and remote teams. So how do you continue to engage teams as they continue to work remotely? Or how do you sort of deal with the idea that some are going to go back to the office while others stay remote? So this hybrid model. So there'll be a couple roundtables around that. So those are a couple opportunities. We'll also have some interactive workshops, and those where you'll be able, again, to engage with each other and then go into smaller Zoom breakouts so you can have a more intimate conversation, then come back and share out. So a lot of focus on sharing. And then we're also going to have 2 tracks. So one is geared towards founders and CEOs, and the second towards emerging leaders. And the content will be curated specifically to address those 2 audiences. So those are some of the opportunities. And then usually when the whole thing is sort of done, we'll circle back with lots of resources and, articles, tools that were mentioned. And so there's always a follow-up with sort of more that people can dig into and learn after the conference.
Awesome. Sounds
That's
fantastic.
good. It sounds like it is a bit of a membership organization. How do people get involved with Small Giants? Or what are some of the ways that they can engage with you?
Yeah. So, what we typically, a lot of times we'll do is we'll have a connection just like this. We'll get on Zoom, we'll get to meet them, we'll understand their goals. What are they trying to do in their organization? Who are they trying to develop? And again, so they may kind of just slowly start to engage with our content and resources to see if this is something that they want to bring back to their organization, and or where they're at right now in terms of their work they're doing with regards to this philosophy and where they want to go. And then we sort of help them and map out that journey for them. The summit is always a great way to be introduced. So obviously that's around the corner, and that could be a great opportunity. And then of course, the deeper levels would be the mentorship or the training program for those that want to, again, dig deeper, train others. So those would be the other ways. But it always starts out, we say, with a virtual cup of coffee over Zoom, and then we take it from there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, it must be really exciting for you to have the opportunity to visit with some really great leaders and some leaders that really care about their people and their organizations and building their culture. I was just curious, what's been the biggest impact for you personally of being involved with this community?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gosh, so much. I think probably the biggest thing is knowing that there is a different way to run your business, where it's not just about money or a product or service, right? There's a way where you could be really thoughtful, really intentional. You really start out with the people, you really focus on the culture, and that could allow you to make money. You can make a lot of money, you could scale, you can grow, but there's a methodology to it. So I think, when I first started, I got that sort of in my heart and my gut, but my mind was blown when I would have conversations with Small Giants, and then we would go visit them, and then we would learn about their practices. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is so incredible. Why isn't everybody running their business this way? And so, I think that has been the most impactful. And then the second is the leaders that we work with and talk with and deal with on a daily basis. It's incredible how much passion and how much compassion and caring they have for their people. And again, that's where they're coming from in leading their organizations. So there's something really, incredible about that. So we look forward to every conversation that we have. Every conversation, it's like these people, they want to do good in the world. And oftentimes they want to know how to do it, versus us trying to convert them. So that's been really, for me personally, just really wonderful. And it's what gets me excited and passionate every day to try to do more of this, to get it into more organizations, and to hopefully get more organizations to scale and grow in this way.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Aren't we lucky to be able to work with some of the coolest companies on the planet, and we get paid for it? That is amazing. Is there one story that sticks out to you, one company example or an individual or something? Because we always have our favorites, where you go, oh my gosh, that was incredible, and you tell that story over and over. Is there anything like that you've run into at in your experience at Small Giants?
There are so many, but what I'll say is, because I start out by mentioning Rob Dubé and Image One, because that was my connection to Small Giants. So what I'll share, and we covered them in a series called Stepping Up. So last year, pandemic hits, it's chaos. There's so much negativity and bad news. And then we decided, well, Small Giants are doing some really incredible things. Let's share the goodness of what's happening during this year. So we started a series called Stepping Up. And it was about just companies and leaders who were doing really incredible things despite all the challenges. And so I'll share with Image One how they came about. So they, I think overnight, something like 60 to 70% of their revenue was gone, right? It's a managed printing company. People have to be in the office to print. Nobody was working in an office. So there goes their business. And what was really, really incredible is that, the leadership came together, the whole team met, and they said, look, here's where we're at. Here are the numbers. Here's the situation. This is the reality. We want to keep everybody. We care for you all. We want to make sure we get through this. And so help us get through this. And something like over the next 2 to 3 weeks, the team literally overnight, day in and day out, just sat together, figured it out, and decided that as a team, they're going to take something like a 50% pay cut. They're going to pull through. They're going to figure it out. And over the next few months, that's exactly what happens. So they were able to keep basically almost everyone. They were able to figure out a whole new, line of offering that they could, and they could innovate. And they just got super creative. And it was because they were open and honest and transparent with the team. And of course, it helped that they were financially transparent and they can share all the numbers. But that was just incredible. It could have been so easy to be like, okay, 60% of the team out, we can save our money, we can be profitable, balance sheets look good, but that's not what they did. They just came together, and it was just so unbelievable. And, they're plowing through it, they're figuring it out. And the team is incredibly loyal that they were all part of that decision making. So that's just one example. And there's so many more. But how awesome is that? Yeah. How awesome is that?
That's the best. That's the solution right there, is that, we can get together and figure something out without expecting someone to bail us out. It's all, the answers are all here. Let's figure this thing out. That's awesome.
Yeah, do it together.
Totally awesome.
Yep.
That's great. Well, Hamsa, we always like to kind of wrap up our interviews by asking this question. What's the question we aren't asking you? What should we be asking you?
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I talked about a virtual cup of coffee. So if somebody wants to know how to have a virtual cup of coffee with our team, they could email us at hello@smallgiants.org. And we would love to connect with them. We would love to learn from them and also just support them in their purpose-driven journey. We know it's not an easy one. It's a great one, and you can see wonderful results, but it's not an easy one. So we'd love to connect with them and support them. So again, they can email us at hello@smallgiants.org, and we would love to help them out.
That's awesome. Well, I got to tell you, it's great to have you on the podcast, and we are, having seen this from the beginning, I think Rich and I can both say that we've seen your impact personally on the Small Giants community and really helping to grow the organization. So thank you for being here with us, and thanks for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. It's really nice to be here. It's wonderful to connect with you. And we appreciate all the synergies and alignment that we have with you all. So thank you so much.
You bet. Well, let's keep the conversation going. Send your questions, your stories, your best practices, ideas, your challenges, and your victories. Remember, you're not alone. This is capitalism at its best. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.